At the restaurant, my daughter announced loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Go find another table. This one is for our family, not for incompetent old women." Everyone laughed and agreed. Then the waiter placed a bill for $3,000 in front of me for their entire dinner. I smiled, took a sip of water, and calmly paid the check. But after that, I heard a voice shout out, "Just a moment, please." But before we get to that moment, I need to tell you how it all started. Because nobody humiliates their own mother in public without a backstory. A story spanning years. Of silence. Of betrayals that I, being naive, never wanted to see. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 68 years old. And this is the story of how my daughter destroyed me in front of strangers, stole everything I owned for years, and how I finally found the strength to reclaim my dignity. But it is also the story of how she lost absolutely everything. It all started with a phone call on a Tuesday morning. It was Jessica, my daughter. Her voice sounded strangely animated, almost sweet. She had not spoken to me in that tone for months. In fact, she had barely spoken to me at all for months. Our conversations had been reduced to cold text messages, short answers, and constant excuses as to why she could not visit me. "Mom," she said that morning, with a joy that seemed almost artificial, "I want to invite you to lunch this Saturday, a special place, something important to celebrate as a family." She did not tell me what it was. She did not give me details. Just the address of a restaurant downtown that I knew by name. The Gilded Oak. One of those places where the elite go to celebrate milestones. A place I could never afford on my Social Security checks. I felt a small spark of hope ignite in my chest. Maybe, I thought as I hung up the phone, maybe things were finally changing between us. Maybe my daughter missed me. Maybe this was the moment we would go back to being a real mother and daughter, like when she was little and came to me for everything, when I was her refuge, her advice, her whole world. Before Richard came along. Before money became the only thing that mattered. On Saturday, I got ready with all the care in the world. I put on my best dress, the burgundy one I had always liked, the one I had bought years ago for Jessica's wedding. I applied my makeup softly in front of the fogged-up mirror in my small bathroom. I wanted to look good. I wanted Jessica to feel proud of me when she saw me walk in. I wanted her to say, "That is my mom." I combed my hair carefully, hiding the gray strands that were becoming more abundant. I put on the pearl earrings that had belonged to my mother. I took my most formal handbag, the black faux leather one I saved for special occasions. I called a rideshare to the restaurant because it was far from my apartment in the expensive part of the city, where the streets are clean and the skyscrapers shine under the sun. The ride cost me nearly $40, but I did not care. It was for my daughter. It was for family. When the car pulled up in front of the restaurant, I felt my stomach tighten. The place was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, chandeliers hanging from the high ceiling, servers in impeccable suits moving between the tables as if they were actors on a stage. Everything smelled of money, of a world to which I clearly did not belong. But I took a deep breath. It was my daughter who had invited me. I had a right to be there. I pushed the glass door and entered. The air conditioning hit me immediately, so cold it made me shiver. I looked around nervously, feeling like everyone was watching me. In the back, near the large windows overlooking the city skyline, I saw Jessica. She was seated at a large, round table, perfectly decorated with fresh flowers and crystal glasses that sparkled under the light. Next to her was Richard, her husband, with that arrogant smile that had always made me uncomfortable, that look of superiority he wore as if the world owed him something. And my two grandsons, Liam and Noah, 12 and 14 years old, sitting with their phones in their hands, completely oblivious to the world around them, lost in their screens. I approached slowly, feeling the eyes of other diners on me. An older lady, in a dress that had probably seen better days, walking alone among tables of elegant people. I raised my hand to wave when I was close enough. "Hello, darling," I said with a trembling smile, trying to sound cheerful. "I arrived a little early. I hope that is okay." Jessica looked up from her glass of wine. She saw me, and her expression changed. It was not surprise. It was not joy. It was pure annoyance, as if she had just remembered an irritating chore she had to do. as if I were an item on her to-do list. I stopped a few steps from the table, waiting for her to invite me to sit, waiting for a hug, a kiss, something. But Jessica did not get up. She did not reach out her arms. She did not even smile. She simply looked me up and down with those cold eyes I no longer recognized. Eyes that once looked at me with love and now only reflected disdain. "Mom," she said loudly, loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear every word perfectly. "What are you doing standing here looking lost?" Her tone was mocking, condescending, as if she were speaking to someone who did not understand simple instructions. I laughed nervously, thinking perhaps it was a joke. "Well, I came for lunch. You invited me, remember?" The words came out insecurely from my mouth. Jessica exchanged a look with Richard, a conspiratorial look, a look that said, "Here we go again." He let out a short, dismissive laugh and leaned back in his chair as if he were about to enjoy a show. "Of course we invited you," Jessica said finally, crossing her arms over her expensive silk blouse. "But this table is for the family, for us, not for you." The words hit me like a direct punch to the stomach. I stood paralyzed, unable to process what I had just heard. I looked around, confused, searching for some explanation in the faces of Richard, the boys, anyone. "What do you mean not for me? I am your mother, Jessica. I am your family." My voice came out weaker than I would have liked. She sighed with exaggerated drama, rolling her eyes as if dealing with a stubborn and impossible child. "Mom, please, do not make a scene here. We reserved this table for the four of us, for our nuclear family. You can sit over there." She pointed with her hand, with an almost dismissive gesture, toward a small table in the corner of the restaurant, near the entrance to the restrooms. A table for one person. Lonely, isolated, exposed, humiliating. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. The walls were spinning. "Jessica, I do not understand. Why would you do that? I came because you told me it was a special family occasion." "I thought that." Richard leaned forward, interrupting me with that cruel smile he always hid behind his good manners in public. "Eleanor," he said, using my first name as if he were a stranger speaking to me, as if he had not spent 20 years calling me Mom. "You are part of the celebration. Of course you are, but not at the main table. Understand, this is something intimate between us. You are only here because, well, because someone has to pay the bill, and you have always been good for that." No. The entire restaurant seemed to go silent. Or perhaps it was me who stopped hearing everything except the ringing in my ears. My heart was beating so hard it physically hurt in my chest. I looked at Jessica, searching for her eyes, desperately waiting for her to say something, to deny it, to laugh and say it was a cruel joke, to defend me like she used to. Many years ago, I defended her from everything, but she just looked away, took her glass of white wine, and drank slowly, as if this whole conversation bored her. The boys were still on their phones, headphones on. Nobody looked at me. Nobody seemed to care that they were tearing me apart in public. "Go out and find another table," Jessica said finally, with a firm and cold voice I had never heard directed at me. "This is for our family, not for incompetent old women who do not know when they are unwanted." And then the worst thing happened. The table next to us laughed. A young, elegant couple, with glasses of champagne in front of them. They looked at me, and then at Jessica, exchanged a knowing look, and the woman whispered something in the man's ear that made them laugh harder. As if they were watching a comedy, as if my humiliation were free entertainment to liven up their lunch. Other people turned to look. Some with pity, others with morbid curiosity. I felt the tears burning savagely behind my eyes, pressing, demanding to come out. But I did not let them fall. I was not going to give Jessica that satisfaction. I was not going to break down in front of her and all these strangers. I clenched my fists at my sides. I breathed deeply, and I walked toward the lonely table in the corner. Every step was agony. I could feel the stares fixed on my back, the barely disguised whispers. The waiter followed me with a menu in his hands, with an uncomfortable and professional smile that did not reach his eyes, as if he too knew something was terribly wrong but could do nothing about it. I sat in that lonely chair, alone, completely alone, while a few feet away, my daughter, my son-in-law, and my grandsons laughed, toasted with expensive wines, and ordered plate after plate, as if they were celebrating the most important event of their lives. I only ordered a glass of sparkling water. I was not hungry. I had a knot in my throat so tight I knew I could not swallow anything solid. I had no desire for anything except to disappear. I just wanted this nightmare to end. I just wanted to go home, crawl into my bed, and forget this day ever existed. But the worst, the absolute worst, was yet to come. Because hours passed, I watched as they brought appetizer after appetizer to their table. Fresh oysters, Wagyu beef carpaccio, salads with ingredients I had never heard named. Then the main courses: lobster, salmon, cuts of steak that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check, bottles of wine, 1, 2, 3. Richard ordered them naturally, as if money meant nothing. Elaborate desserts, specialty coffees, all while I remained seated in my corner, drinking water, watching my own family celebrate something without me. And then, when it was all over, when they had eaten their fill, when Richard lit a cigar and Jessica checked her phone with a satisfied expression, the waiter came toward me. His steps were slow, almost fearful, and in his hands he carried a black leather folder, the check. He left it in front of me with an expression that mixed apology and discomfort. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "the bill for the main table. They indicated that you would take care of it." My hands trembled as I opened the folder, and there it was, printed in clear and relentless numbers. $3,000. 3,000 damn dollars for a meal I had not even tasted. I looked at those numbers and felt something break inside me. $3,000. It was more than I received in 3 months of retirement benefits. It was the money I had saved for an entire year for emergencies. It was the amount it had taken endless sacrifices to gather, living on the bare minimum, denying myself small pleasures, always buying the cheapest options, walking instead of taking the bus. And now it was there, on a slip of paper, waiting for me to pay for a feast I had not even shared, for a celebration from which I was deliberately excluded. I looked up at Jessica's table. She was looking at me, not with guilt, not with shame, with expectation, with that expression that clearly said, "Come on, Mom, do what you always do. Pay and shut up." Richard was also watching, leaning back in his chair with that arrogant smile, smoking his cigar as if he owned the world. The boys were still on their phones, oblivious to everything. I thought about getting up. I thought about throwing that folder on their table and telling them to pay it themselves. I thought about screaming, about making the scene Jessica so feared I would make. I thought about running out and letting them deal with it alone. But I did not. Because for 68 years I had learned to swallow my pride, to bite my tongue, to endure. Because that was what mothers did, right? Sacrifice, endure, give everything without expecting anything in return. That is how I had been taught. That is how I had lived. I took my credit card out of my purse with shaking hands. The only card I had, the one I used only for emergencies because the interest rates were killing me. The one that already had a balance I struggled to pay every month. The waiter took it with a polite bow and walked away. I looked at Jessica again. She raised her glass in a silent toast to me, with a smile that did not reach her eyes. A mocking toast. A toast that said, "Thank you for being so predictable, Mom." The waiter returned with the receipt. I signed it without reading it, without thinking. Because if I really processed what I was doing, I would crumble right there. I stood up, took my bag, and walked toward the exit. I passed by Jessica's table without looking at them, without saying goodbye, without giving them the satisfaction of seeing my destroyed face. I heard Richard's laugh behind my back, a deep, satisfied laugh. "Always so obedient," he murmured, loud enough for me to hear. "That is why we love her so much." More laughter. Jessica. Richard. Even the kids had taken off their headphones and were laughing. I reached the door. My legs barely held me up. I felt my chest tight, as if someone were sitting on my heart. I pushed the glass door, and the hot air of the street hit me in the face. I took 2 steps onto the sidewalk. I breathed deeply, trying not to collapse right there. And then, just when I thought it was all over, when I thought I could finally go home and cry in private, I heard a voice behind me. A strong, clear voice, that cut the air like a knife. "Just a moment, please." I stood paralyzed. It was not Jessica's voice. It was not Richard. It was a woman's voice, older, with a tone of authority that did not admit being ignored. I turned around slowly, and then I saw her. Tall, with perfectly coiffed white hair, dressed elegantly but without ostentation. She was walking toward me from inside the restaurant with firm and determined steps. Her eyes, dark and piercing, were fixed on mine, and on her face was something I had not seen on anyone that day: indignation, anger, but not directed at me, directed at what she had just witnessed. She stopped in front of me. She looked me up and down, not with contempt as my daughter had done, but with something akin to understanding. "Are you okay?" she asked, with a soft but firm voice. I could not answer. The words stuck in my throat. She waited a moment and then looked over my shoulder, toward the inside of the restaurant, toward where Jessica and Richard were surely still celebrating their victory. "I saw everything," she said then, and her voice hardened. "I was sitting at the table on the other side. I saw how they treated you. I saw how they humiliated you. And I saw how you paid that bill without saying a word." I felt the tears finally beginning to escape. I could not stop them anymore. This stranger, this woman I did not know at all, was speaking to me with more compassion than my own daughter had shown me in years. "It is nothing," I lied, wiping my cheeks with the back of my hand. "Just a family misunderstanding." She shook her head with an expression that mixed sadness and determination. "It was not a misunderstanding. It was abuse. And I am not going to stay silent watching a mother be treated like that by her own daughter." Before I could respond, she turned around and walked back toward the restaurant. I followed her without thinking, moved by something I did not understand. Curiosity? Hope? Fear of what might be? She walked straight in, with the assurance of someone who knows exactly what she is going to say, and she headed without hesitation toward Jessica's table. I stayed a few steps behind, watching, with my heart beating so hard it felt like it was going to explode. "Excuse the interruption," the woman said, planting herself in front of the table with her arms crossed. Jessica looked up, surprised. Richard stopped smoking and looked at her with annoyance. "Who are you?" Jessica asked with that haughty tone she used when someone inconvenienced her. "I am someone who just witnessed the most shameful spectacle I have seen in years," the woman responded without flinching. "Humiliating your own mother in public, excluding her from your table, calling her incompetent in front of strangers, and then making her pay $3,000 for a meal she did not even share with you. That is what you call family." The entire restaurant went silent. All conversations ceased. All eyes turned toward our direction. Jessica turned red, but not from shame, from anger. "This is none of your business," she hissed between her teeth. "Mind your own problems." Richard stood up, trying to intimidate with his height. "Ma'am, I suggest you leave before I call the manager." The woman did not move. She did not even blink. "Call him. I would love to tell him how you are financially abusing an elderly woman. I am sure this establishment would be interested to know they are being accomplices to family mistreatment." Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but the woman continued. "Do you know how many times I have seen this story? Children who use their parents as ATMs, who humiliate them, cast them aside, treat them like trash, but always show up when they need money. It is disgusting, and you should be ashamed." Richard tried to say something, but she cut him off with a gesture of her hand. "No, I do not want to hear excuses. I saw what you did, and she pointed toward me without turning around, "is coming with me right now." She turned around and walked toward me. She extended her hand. "Come," she said simply. "Walk out of here with dignity." I looked at her extended hand. Then I looked at Jessica, who was watching me with a mixture of fury and bewilderment. I looked at Richard, whose arrogance finally showed a crack. I looked at my grandsons, who for the first time all afternoon had put down their phones and were watching the scene with wide eyes. And then I took that hand. The hand of a stranger offering me more respect than my own blood had given me in years. We walked together toward the exit. Behind us, I heard Jessica's voice, shrill and desperate. "Mom, do not be ridiculous. Come back here right now." I did not stop. I did not look back. We walked out to the street, and the bright sun blinded me for a moment. The woman guided me gently toward a nearby bench and helped me sit. My legs no longer responded. My whole body was shaking. "Breathe," she said, sitting next to me. "Just breathe." I inhaled deeply, exhaled. I repeated the process several times. Slowly, the world stopped spinning. "Thank you," I managed to say, finally, with a hoarse voice. "You did not have to do that." She looked at me with a small, sad smile. "Of course I had to do it. Because no one else was doing it. And why?" She paused. "Because I was in your place once, many years ago, and I wish someone had intervened for me when I needed it." We sat in silence for a moment. Traffic passed in front of us. People walked on the sidewalk, oblivious to what had just happened. The world kept turning as if nothing had occurred. "My name is Margaret," she said finally. The name hit me like a lightning bolt. Margaret, my older sister, the one who had disappeared from my life almost 10 years ago after a fight we never resolved. The one who had gone to live in another city and with whom I had barely spoken since. I turned to look at her, really look at her. And then I saw it, my mother's eyes, the same shape of the nose, the same gesture when she pursed her lips. "Margaret," I whispered in disbelief. She nodded slowly. "Yes, Eleanor, it is me." The tears returned, but this time they were different. They were not tears of humiliation. They were tears of surprise, of confusion, of a million emotions I could not name. "What? What were you doing there? How?" Margaret sighed deeply. "I came back to the city 2 months ago. I wanted to find you, but I did not know how after so much time. Today I went to that restaurant with a friend, and then I saw you walk in. I recognized you immediately, even though years have passed. And then I saw everything. I saw how your daughter treated you, and I could not stay silent. I stared at her, unable to believe that my sister, after a decade of silence, had appeared just at the moment I needed her most. "I do not understand," I murmured, wiping my tears with trembling hands. "Why now? Why today?" Margaret took my hand in hers. Her hands were warm, firm, so different from mine, which shook uncontrollably. "Because the universe has strange ways of putting us where we need to be. And because I saw in your eyes the same pain I felt when my own daughter tried to do something similar to me years ago. That is why I left. That is why I cut ties. And that is why I recognized that look immediately. I did not know what to say. So many years had passed, so many words unsaid, so much distance between us. But in that moment, sitting on that bench with the weight of humiliation still fresh in my chest, I could only feel gratitude. "Thank you for defending me," I said finally. "Nobody has done that in a long time." Margaret squeezed my hand tighter. "Eleanor, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. What I saw today, is it the first time it happens, or has it been going on for a long time?" The question hit me like cold water. I opened my mouth to say it was the first time, to defend Jessica, to find some excuse, but the words did not come out, because if I was honest, completely honest, I knew it was not the first time. It was just the first time it had been so public, so brutal, so undeniable. "It has been happening for years," I admitted finally, and hearing those words out loud made me realize how true it was. "But never like this, never so cruel." Margaret nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer. "And the money? How many times have you paid for them? How many times have they used you as their personal bank?" The question made me uncomfortable. "She is my daughter," I said defensively. "Parents help their children. It is normal. Helping is one thing, Eleanor. Being exploited is another thing entirely. $3,000 for a lunch from which they deliberately excluded you is not help, it is abuse." The word made me shudder. Abuse. It sounded so strong, so definitive. "It is not that big of a deal," I muttered, although a part of me knew she was right. Margaret stood up and positioned herself in front of me, forcing me to look her in the eyes. "Eleanor, listen to me closely. I need you to come with me right now, to my house. We need to talk seriously, and I need to show you some things I have been investigating." I looked at her confused. "Investigating? What are you talking about?" Her expression became grave. "I have been in the city for 2 months, and in that time, I have been making some inquiries about Jessica and Richard. Things that worried me when I heard them. Things I think you need to know. A shiver ran down my spine. What kind of things? Margaret looked around, as if she feared someone might hear us. Not here. Come with me. I will explain everything when we are in a private place. I hesitated. A part of me wanted to go straight home, crawl into bed, and pretend this day had never happened. But another part, a stronger part, needed to know what Margaret had discovered. I nodded slowly. Okay, I will go with you. Margaret's apartment was in a quiet part of the city, in a modest but well-maintained building. We walked up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was under maintenance. Every step was an effort, not just physical but emotional. I felt like I was climbing towards something that would change everything, though I did not know exactly what. Margaret opened the door and ushered me into a cozy space, clean, full of natural light entering through large windows. There were plants in the corners, photographs on the walls, a feeling of warmth that my own apartment had lost long ago. Sit down, she said, pointing to a comfortable sofa. I am going to make coffee. She disappeared into the kitchen while I sank into the cushions, feeling all the exhaustion of the day fall upon me like a wave. I closed my eyes for a moment. Jessica's face appeared in my mind, that expression of contempt when she told me to go to another table. The words echoed over and over again. Incompetent old women who do not know when they are unwanted. Is that really how my daughter saw me? As a nuisance? As someone who was extra in her life? Margaret returned with 2 cups of steaming coffee and a thick folder under her arm. She sat in front of me in an armchair and placed the folder on the coffee table between us. Before I show you this, I need you to understand something. What I am going to tell you is going to be difficult to hear. It is going to hurt, and you are probably going to want to deny it or tell me I am wrong. But everything I have here are facts, documents, evidence. My stomach tightened. Evidence of what? Margaret opened the folder slowly. 2 months ago, when I came back to the city, I tried to find you. I asked about you in the neighborhood where we used to live as girls. Someone gave me your current address. I went to your building, but I did not have the courage to knock on your door. Instead, I stood watching, and then I saw Jessica leaving your apartment. I recognized her from the photos our cousin Maria had sent me years ago. I followed her that day. I do not know why. Intuition, maybe. She paused to sip some coffee. I could barely breathe, waiting for her to continue. I followed her to a bank. I saw her walk in with a card in her hand. A card that was not hers. I saw her make withdrawals at the ATM. Several withdrawals. And then I saw her go to a luxury store where she spent hundreds of dollars on clothes. I froze. You are saying Jessica has access to my bank account? Margaret nodded gravely. Not just access, Eleanor. Total control. She took some papers out of the folder and spread them in front of me. They were bank statements. My bank statements. But how had she gotten them? I have a friend who works in social services, Margaret explained, as if she had read my mind. When I told her my suspicions, she helped me do some legal research. And what we found was alarming. She pointed to the papers with her finger. Look here. Constant withdrawals. Twice a week. Sometimes more. $500. $700. $1,000. And you never make them. They are always at times when you are at home. I took the papers with trembling hands, and there it was, in black and white. Transactions I did not remember. Withdrawals I had not made. Purchases at stores I had never visited. But how? I have my card with me always. Margaret took out another document. Because she has a power of attorney. Legal power over your finances. Look, it was a copy of a notarized document, with my signature at the bottom, but I did not remember signing that. When was this? I asked, looking at the date. 8 years ago. Jessica came to me 8 years ago. I remembered slowly, trying to reconstruct the moment. She said she needed me to sign some papers to help her with a loan, that it was just a formality, that the bank required them. Margaret closed her eyes in frustration. It was not for a loan, Eleanor. It was to give her total access to your accounts, to your retirement fund, to everything. And since then, she has been systematically taking money out. Look at these numbers. She pointed to a column on the statements. In 8 years, she has withdrawn over $200,000 from your accounts. The number hit me like a hammer. $200,000. It was impossible. It could not be real. I do not have that much money, I whispered. My Social Security is small. It does not reach $1,000 a month. Margaret shook her head. Your monthly check is small, but do you remember the inheritance our parents left when they died? That house we sold and divided among the 3 sisters. Your share was $150,000. And besides, 10 years ago, when you were still working, you had savings. Your severance package when you retired was generous. In total, you had close to $300,000 8 years ago. I looked at her without comprehending. But then, where is that money now? Margaret pointed to the papers. Here is your answer. Jessica has been taking it out little by little. Slowly enough for you not to notice immediately, but constantly enough to empty you completely. Look at your current balance. She pointed to a number at the bottom of the last page. $5,000. It was all that remained of my life savings. 5,000 miserable dollars. I stared at that number, unable to process it. And what did she spend it on? I asked with a hollow voice. Margaret took out more papers. Printed photographs. On this, her business. They were photos of an elegant boutique in the city center. The name shown in gold letters. Jessica's Collection. Do you see this place? She opened it 6 years ago. She told you she had secured investors, right? I nodded slowly. I remembered. Jessica had been so excited. She had invited me to the grand opening, and I had been so proud of her. The investors were you, Eleanor. Your money opened that business. Your money has kept it running, and you did not even know it. I felt nauseous. But the business must be doing well. She always talks about how successful she is. Margaret grimaced. That business is on the verge of bankruptcy. It lost money from day one. The only real income comes from your account. Richard also has failed businesses. He tried to open a restaurant 3 years ago. It failed in 6 months. He lost all the initial capital. Where do you think that money came from? From my account, I said, feeling the world crumbling around me. From your account, Margaret confirmed. And not just that. Look at this. She took out another document. Your house. That small house in the suburbs you bought 20 years ago, when you were still working, the one you thought you would leave to your grandkids someday. It is still in your name. I blinked, confused. I do not know. I have not checked those papers in years. The house is rented. Jessica takes care of collecting the rent and depositing it in my account. Margaret shook her head slowly. The house is no longer in your name, Eleanor. It was transferred 4 years ago, to Jessica and Richard's name. The words made no sense. That is impossible. I never sold that house. I never signed anything. Margaret showed me the transfer documents, and there was my signature. Again. Do you remember signing any paper 4 years ago? Something Jessica told you was for taxes or property maintenance. I closed my eyes, trying to remember. And then it came to mind. Jessica had come with a pile of papers. She said there were issues with the property taxes, that she needed my signature to fix it. I trusted her. I signed without reading. She stole my house, I whispered, feeling the air leave my lungs. My own daughter stole my house. Margaret leaned in and took my hands. And not just that. The rent she supposedly deposits in your account? Have you ever actually seen that money enter? I thought about it. Jessica always said the money was there, that it was added to my pension. But I had never specifically checked. I trusted her. The rent never went to your account, Margaret said softly. It went straight to theirs. You have lost 4 years of rental income. About $50,000 more. I could not breathe. I could not think. Everything I thought I knew about my life was falling apart. Why? I managed to ask finally. Why would my own daughter do this to me? Margaret sighed deeply. Because she married a greedy man who convinced her that your money belonged to them more than to you. Because she became addicted to a lifestyle she cannot afford. Because she stopped seeing you as her mother and started seeing you as a resource. And because you never said no. Margaret's words resonated in my head like warning bells I had ignored for years. But they are my family, I said weakly, knowing even as I said it that it sounded pathetic. Parents help their children. Parents sacrifice. Margaret squeezed my hands tighter, forcing me to look directly into her eyes. Eleanor, there is a huge difference between helping and being systematically destroyed. You did not help Jessica. She exploited you, manipulated you, and stole from you for 8 years. And today, after all that, she humiliated you publicly and made you pay $3,000 for a meal from which you were deliberately excluded. Is that what I am worth to you? An ATM without dignity. I collapsed. The tears I had been holding back for hours finally came out uncontrollably. I cried for the lost years, for the stolen money, for the house that was no longer mine, for the dreams I had had of leaving something to my grandchildren, for every humiliation I had swallowed in silence, thinking it was the right thing to do. I cried because finally I had to face the truth. My daughter did not love me. She only used me. And she had done it for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to be treated with respect. Margaret hugged me while I sobbed against her shoulder. She said nothing. She just held me, letting me empty out all the pain I had accumulated. When I finally calmed down, when there were no more tears left, I pulled away slowly. "What do I do now?" I asked with a hoarse voice. "I do not know what to do." Margaret got up and went to the kitchen, returning with a glass of water which I drank gratefully. "Now," she said firmly, "you defend yourself. You take back what is yours, and you show them they cannot keep abusing you without consequences." I laughed bitterly. "How? I do not have money for a lawyer. I barely have money to live next month after what I paid today." Margaret smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was a smile of determination. "That is why I am here. I have been preparing for this moment since I discovered what they were doing. I have contacts, a lawyer friend who works pro bono cases for victims of family abuse, a social worker who will document everything, and I have enough money saved to cover any expenses that arise. You are not alone in this, Eleanor, not anymore." I looked at her in disbelief. "Why would you do this for me? After everything that happened between us, after years without speaking?" Margaret sat beside me again. "Because you are my sister. Because I made the mistake of leaving you alone when we fought 10 years ago. And because I saw the same thing happening to you happen to other women our age. Mothers who give everything and end up with nothing, and I am tired of seeing it. If I can help you, if I can stop this, then maybe all the pain of the past is worth it." I did not know what to say. After a whole day feeling completely alone and worthless, having someone offering me real help, genuine support, was almost too much to process. "And if she gets angry," I asked quietly, "what if Jessica decides she never wants to see me again? What if I lose my grandkids?" The question revealed my greatest fear. Margaret looked at me with compassion, but also with firmness. "Eleanor, when was the last time Jessica really wanted to see you? When was the last time she called just to know how you were? When was the last time the grandkids spent time with you without it being because they needed something?" I tried to remember, and I realized with horror that I could not. Every visit in the last few years had been transactional. Jessica appeared when she needed money. The grandkids came when they needed someone to buy them something. Every phone call ended with a request. Every family gathering ended with a bill I paid. "You already lost them," Margaret said softly. "You lost the daughter who loved you unconditionally years ago, if that version of her ever existed. The only thing you have now is a relationship based on financial and emotional abuse. And believe me when I tell you this, it is better to be alone with dignity than accompanied while being constantly humiliated." I thought about the words Jessica had said in the restaurant. "Incompetent old women who do not know when they are unwanted." Is that how she really saw me? As someone who was unwanted? The thought filled me not only with sadness but with something new. Something I had not felt toward my daughter in a long time. Anger, real anger, deep, justified. "You are right," I said finally, feeling that anger beginning to solidify into determination. "You are right. I cannot go on like this. I am not going to go on like this." Margaret smiled, this time with genuine satisfaction. "That is the Eleanor I remember, the one who did not let anyone trample her, the one who fought alone for years to raise us after Dad died. That strength is still there. It just needed to remember you have it." She stood up and extended her hand. "So, are you with me? Are you ready to fight?" I took her hand and stood up. My legs were still shaking, but there was something different now, a spark of hope. I am ready. Tell me what I have to do. Margaret nodded. First, tonight you stay here. Do not go back to your apartment yet. I need you to be in a safe place while we organize everything. I nodded, grateful not to have to face the loneliness of my small, empty apartment. Second, early tomorrow we go to see the lawyer, David Sterling. He is good, he is honest, and he has won cases more complicated than this one. We will explain everything to him, show him the documentation, and start the legal process. What kind of process? I asked nervously. First, we will annul that power of attorney. It is fraudulent because you were deceived into signing it. Second, we will initiate a lawsuit for misappropriation of funds. Jessica and Richard will have to return every cent they stole. Third, we will recover ownership of your house. That transfer was also fraudulent. And fourth, she paused, if necessary, we will press criminal charges. The word criminal made me shudder. Could she go to jail? My daughter could go to jail? Margaret looked at me seriously. She could, depending on how she handles this. If she cooperates, if she returns what was stolen, maybe she can avoid it. But if she fights, if she denies everything, if she tries to keep manipulating you, then yes, she could face criminal consequences. The idea terrified me, but also, strangely, gave me a sense of justice. After years of being the one who lost everything, the one who always yielded, finally there were real consequences for the one who had hurt me. There is something else you need to know, Margaret continued, going back to the folder and pulling out more papers. While investigating, I discovered you are not the only one. Richard has a history. He did something similar to his own mother 15 years ago. He convinced her to transfer her house to him, emptied her accounts, and when she tried to confront him, he threatened to cut off access to her grandchildren. She committed suicide 6 months later. Horror washed over me. Jessica knows this. Margaret nodded gravely. She has to know. And she chose to marry him anyway. She chose to follow the same pattern. That tells you everything you need to know about who your daughter really is now. I sat down again, feeling my legs fail me. I cannot believe this is happening. This morning I woke up thinking I was going to have a family lunch. And now I am planning to sue my own daughter. You are not suing her, Margaret corrected. You are protecting yourself from someone who is systematically destroying you. There is a difference. That night I slept in Margaret's guest room. Or rather, I tried to sleep. My mind would not stop spinning. I saw Jessica's face when she was little, her bright eyes full of love. I remembered her running to me after school, telling me about her day. I remembered her hugging me when she had nightmares, telling me I love you, Mommy. When had it changed? When had I become nothing more than a source of money for her? Or had it always been this way and I had been too blind to see it? At 3 a.m, my phone began to vibrate. Messages, one after another, all from Jessica. I read them in the dark, with the screen glow illuminating my face. Mom, where are you? Who was that woman at the restaurant? You are being ridiculous. Call me right now. I cannot believe you embarrassed me like that in front of everyone. After everything we have done for you. Always so dramatic. And finally, if you do not call me early tomorrow, do not bother looking for me again. I am sick of your tantrums. I read that last message several times. I am sick of your tantrums. As if I were a spoiled child. As if defending myself, or rather, allowing someone to defend me, was a tantrum. Something solidified in my chest. A hardness I had not felt before. I deleted the messages without replying, and I blocked her number. For the first time in 8 years, I was not going to respond to her demands. I was not going to fold. I was not going to apologize for existing. The next morning, Margaret prepared breakfast while I showered and put on clean clothes she had lent me. We ate in silence, both knowing that the coming day would change everything. At 9 o'clock sharp, we arrived at the office of attorney David Sterling. He was a man of about 50, with a serious but kind expression. He received us in his modest but organized office. Margaret explained the situation while I sat there, still processing everything. David listened attentively, taking notes. When Margaret finished, he looked directly at me. Mrs. Vance, are you sure you want to proceed with this? Once we initiate legal actions, there is no turning back. Your relationship with your daughter will change permanently." I looked him in the eyes. I thought about yesterday's humiliation, about the years of being used, about the $200,000 stolen, about my lost house, about the words, "incompetent old women." And I said with a firm voice, "I am sure. I want to recover what is mine, and I want them to pay for what they did." David nodded. "Then let us begin. First, I need you to tell me everything from the beginning, and I need you to be prepared, because this is going to be public. Jessica and Richard are going to counterattack. They are going to try to paint you as confused, senile, manipulated. They are going to do everything possible to keep control over your money. Let them try," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "This time, I am not going to stay silent." I spent the next 3 hours in that office telling David every detail I could remember, every time Jessica had appeared with papers for me to sign, every withdrawal of money she had justified as family emergencies, every time she had made me feel guilty for asking about my own finances. David took meticulous notes, stopping me occasionally to ask specific questions. "Remember the exact dates? Witnesses? Do you have copies of anything?" Margaret was pulling documents out of her folder, handing them to him one by one. Bank statements, property transfer documents, records of the fraudulent power of attorney. Everything was there, organized chronologically, painting a devastating picture of systematic financial abuse. "This is solid," David said finally, reviewing the papers spread across his desk. "Very solid. You have clear documentation of fraud, misappropriation, and abuse of legal power. The case practically builds itself." I felt a flash of hope. "Then we can recover the money." David leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands under his chin. "We can try, but I need to be honest with you, Mrs. Vance. Recovering money that has already been spent is complicated. If Jessica and Richard invested it in businesses that failed, or spent it on a lifestyle they already consumed, we cannot take money from where there is none. What we can do is recover the house, annul the power of attorney, and possibly establish a mandatory restitution plan where they have to pay you monthly until the debt is settled." "And how long would that take?" Margaret asked. David gestured with his hands. "Years. Possibly decades, if the amount is as large as it seems, but at least you would be legally protected. They could not touch your money anymore. They could not come near you, and they would have real legal consequences if they did not comply." I remained silent, processing. I would not recover everything. I would probably never recover the majority. But at least it would stop. At least they would not keep destroying me. "There is another thing," continued David, looking at me seriously. "Once we file this, they are going to react. And based on what you have told me about Richard and his history, it is not going to be a calm reaction. They are going to try to contact you. They are going to threaten. They are going to beg. They are going to make promises. They are going to use the grandkids as an emotional weapon. Are you prepared for that?" I was not. Not really. But I nodded anyway. "I have to be." David exchanged a look with Margaret. "I strongly recommend you stay with your sister during this process. Change your phone number. Avoid places where they can find you alone. I have seen cases like this turn ugly very fast when the abusive person realizes they are losing control." A shiver went through me. "Do you think they could physically hurt me?" David hesitated before answering. "I do not want to scare you unnecessarily, but Richard has a history of aggressive behavior. Nothing criminal on record, but there were neighbor reports of violent arguments in his previous marriage. I just want you to be safe." Margaret took my hand. "You are staying with me. You are not going back to that apartment alone. In fact, today, we are going with a police escort to pick up your most important things and bring them to my house." The idea of needing police protection to enter my own home seemed surreal to me, but after everything I had discovered in the last 24 hours, nothing surprised me anymore. "When do we start?" I asked David. He smiled slightly. "We already started. I am going to prepare the documents today. Tomorrow morning we will file them with the court, and by noon, Jessica and Richard will receive the official notification. That is when it really begins." We left David's office with a mixture of relief and terror. Margaret took me to lunch at a small, quiet cafe far from downtown. I ate without really tasting the food. my mind spinning constantly about what was coming. What if she is right? I said suddenly, interrupting the silence. What if Jessica reacts badly? What if this makes everything worse? Margaret put her fork down on the plate and stared at me. Eleanor, listen to me closely. It is already worse. You already lost your money. You already lost your house. You already lost your dignity. What else can they take from you that they haven't taken already? She was right, but even so, a part of me, that part that had been a mother for more than 40 years, resisted the idea of hurting my daughter. Even after everything. It is hard, I admitted quietly. It is hard to stop seeing your daughter as that little girl who needed you to protect her. Margaret sighed. I know, believe me, I know. When I had to cut contact with my own daughter years ago for similar reasons, I thought it was going to kill me. But you know what I learned, that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to walk away from whoever is destroying you, even if it is your own blood. That afternoon we went to my apartment with 2 police officers Margaret had contacted through her connections in social services. We entered the small space that had been my home for the last few years, and suddenly it seemed sad, empty, as if it had never truly been mine. The officers waited in the living room while Margaret helped me pack clothes, important documents, old photographs, some books I loved. Everything fit into 2 suitcases and 3 boxes. It was depressing to see how little I had accumulated in 68 years of life. While packing the photographs, I found one of Jessica when she was 7 years old. She was at the park, on the swings, laughing with that pure laughter only children have. I stood looking at it for a long moment. Margaret came over and looked over my shoulder. She was beautiful, she said softly. She was, I replied, feeling the weight of all the losses at once. And I loved her with everything I had. I know, said Margaret. But love is not enough when the other person decided to stop reciprocating it. I put the photograph in one of the boxes, not knowing exactly why I was taking it, maybe as a reminder that there was a better time, or maybe as proof that all this was real, that I was not inventing a terrible story about my own daughter. Just as we were finishing, I heard the door open. My heart stopped. The officers went on alert immediately, and then she appeared in the doorframe. Jessica. Her eyes swept the scene, the boxes, the suitcases, the police, Margaret, and finally fixed on me. What the hell is going on here? She demanded to know, her voice loud and furious. One of the officers stepped forward. Ma'am, this is a private residence. If you do not have permission to be here, you will have to leave. Jessica ignored him completely, walking straight toward me. Mom, what are you doing? Why are there police here? And why is she here? She pointed at Margaret with disdain. I opened my mouth, but the words did not come out. Margaret placed herself between us. She is leaving, Jessica, and you are going to let her go in peace. Jessica looked at her with pure hate. You are putting ideas in her head. You are driving her away from her family. Her family, spat Margaret with sarcasm, humiliated her publicly yesterday and stole more than $200,000 from her. Some family. The color drained from Jessica's face. I do not know what you are talking about. Of course you know, responded Margaret with deadly calm. And tomorrow, when you receive the legal notification, you are going to have to explain to a judge exactly what I am talking about. Jessica looked at me, her eyes now showing something akin to panic. Legal notification? Mom, what did you do? Finally, I found my voice. It was shaky, but it was there. What I should have done years ago. Protect myself. Protect yourself? From me? I am your daughter. Her voice broke into something like disbelief. You are my daughter, I repeated, feeling tears burning my eyes. And that is why it hurts so much that you treated me the way you did. That you stole from me. That you humiliated me. That you used me as an ATM without any respect for everything I sacrificed for you. Jessica changed tactics instantly. Her eyes filled with tears. Her voice softened. Mom, no. You are confused. I never stole from you. That money was to help us. For the family. You wanted to help. You always wanted to help. It was impressive to see her switch so fast from anger to manipulation. It does not work anymore, I said, surprising myself with my own firmness. You cannot manipulate me anymore. I am not manipulating you. My God, Mom, that woman is brainwashing you. Do you not see it? She is taking you away from us, from your grandkids. What are they going to think when they know you abandoned them? There it was, the emotional weapon David had predicted. The grandkids. I am not abandoning them, I said, though my voice trembled. You abandoned me years ago. Only I was too blind to see it. Jessica took a step toward me, but the officer stepped in between. Ma'am, I need you to keep your distance. She ignored him, her attention completely on me. Mom, please, do not do this. We are family. We can fix it. Whatever you think happened, we can talk about it. Just do not involve lawyers. Do not involve the police. Please. For a moment, just a moment, I felt the temptation to give in. To say yes. We would forget everything. We would go back to how it was before. But then I remembered that before had never been good. I remembered years of feeling less than, of paying and staying silent, of swallowing humiliations. No, Jessica, I said finally. We are not going to fix it, because there is nothing to fix. There are things to return, money to restitute, consequences to face. But us, as mother and daughter, we ended yesterday when you told me to find another table because I was unwanted. The words hung in the air between us like a final sentence. I saw Jessica's face go through a dozen emotions in seconds: disbelief, anger, panic, and finally something that looked like pure calculation. She was thinking, looking for another angle, another way to manipulate me. You are making a huge mistake, she said finally, her voice dropping to a dangerous tone. You are going to end up alone, without family, without anyone. And who is going to take care of you when you are really old and need help? Her? She pointed to Margaret with contempt. A sister who abandoned you for 10 years and now appears conveniently when she can stir up trouble. Margaret took a step forward, her eyes burning. I abandoned her because you asked me to do it, Jessica. Or did you forget that call 10 years ago, where you told me to stop filling your mother's head with ideas about independence? That we stopped talking because I was a bad influence? Jessica blinked, clearly not expecting Margaret to reveal that. I do not know what you are talking about. Of course you know, replied Margaret. You called me and told me exactly that your mother needed to focus on helping her family, not listening to her single sister talk about living alone and being independent. And like a fool, I walked away. I gave Eleanor space to fix things with you, and you used that space to steal everything from her. Jessica clenched her fists at her sides. For a moment I thought she was going to physically attack Margaret. The officers thought so too because they tensed up, ready to intervene. But Jessica controlled herself. Instead, she looked at me with an expression of such pure hatred that it made me physically recoil. You are going to regret this, she said in a low, poisonous voice. I swear to God you are going to regret this. When you are alone in some cheap nursing home because you have no money or family, when you need help and there is no one, you are going to remember this moment, and you are going to know it was your fault for choosing strangers over your own blood. Strangers treated me better than my own blood, I replied. And there was a new strength in my voice, a strength I did not know I had. A stranger in a restaurant had more compassion for me in 5 minutes than you in 5 years. So yes, I choose strangers. I choose anyone who treats me with a minimum of human respect. Jessica let out a short, bitter laugh. Respect, that is what you want. After everything I did for you. After inviting you to eat, including you in our lives. Including me? I felt my own anger finally surfacing. You sat me at a separate table and made me pay $3,000 for food I did not eat. That is not inclusion. That is paid humiliation. You are so dramatic, exploded Jessica. You have always been so dramatic and played the victim. You know what? Fine. Leave. Stay with your crazy sister. Sue me. Do whatever you want. But do not come back crying when you realize you made the worst mistake of your life. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Without turning completely, she added, and do not call me Mom again. You have no right. A real mother would not betray her own daughter like this. And she left, leaving the door open behind her. The silence that followed was so thick you could almost touch it. One of the officers closed the door gently. Are you okay, ma'am? He asked with genuine concern. I was not okay. but I nodded anyway. Margaret hugged me tightly. "You did it perfectly," she murmured against my hair. "I know it was hard, but you did it." We stayed like that for a moment before finishing packing. The officers helped us take the boxes and suitcases down to Margaret's car. As we left the building, I looked back one last time. I had lived there for 3 years. It had not been much, but it had been mine. Now it felt like a prison cell I was finally escaping. That night, back at Margaret's apartment, I could barely sleep. Not from sadness this time, but from a strange mix of fear and something akin to freedom. For the first time in years, I did not have to worry about Jessica's next call asking for money. I did not have to invent excuses about why I could not give her more. I did not have to pretend everything was fine when clearly it was not. But it also meant I was truly alone. That the family I had built, that I had sacrificed everything to create, had completely disintegrated. The next morning, David called early. "Documents filed," he said efficiently. "The notification will be served this afternoon. How are you?" "Scared," I admitted, "but determined." "Good. Keep that determination. You are going to need it." He hung up and I stared at the phone. Today was the day. Today Jessica would officially receive the lawsuit. And then, the real war would begin. Margaret prepared breakfast, but neither of us ate much. We were both waiting. Waiting for what? I did not know exactly. Maybe the furious call. Maybe for them to show up at the door. Maybe the end of the world. What I did not expect was what actually happened. At 2 in the afternoon, Margaret's phone started ringing. It was her friend Sarah, the one who worked at the local newspaper. "Turn on the news," she said without preamble. "Channel 5. Now." Margaret turned on the TV with shaking hands. And there she was. Jessica, in an impromptu press conference, standing in front of cameras and microphones. With Richard by her side, eyes red as if she had been crying, holding a handkerchief in her hand. "My mother is sick," she was saying with a broken voice. "She has been showing signs of dementia for months. And now, someone is taking advantage of her confusion. My aunt, who disappeared from our lives years ago, has returned and is filling her head with lies. She is convincing her that her own family hurt her, when all we have done is love and care for her." I could not believe what I was seeing. Jessica was sobbing now, wiping her tears carefully so as not to ruin her makeup. "She is suing me," she continued with a trembling voice. "My own mother is suing me for money she voluntarily gave us to help with our business. Money we always knew we would have to pay her back, and that we were in the process of paying back. But now, she does not remember. She does not remember giving permission. She does not remember the conversations we had. And she is being manipulated by people who only want to create division in our family." Richard took the microphone. "We want everyone to know we love Eleanor," he said with a solemn voice, as if he were at a funeral. "She is the matriarch of our family, the grandmother of our children, and we are devastated to see her being used this way. We are seeking legal help to protect her from this exploitation. If anyone has information about my mother-in-law's current whereabouts, please contact us. We are very worried about her well-being." "They are lying," I whispered, feeling the floor move beneath my feet. "They are lying blatantly." Margaret turned off the TV with fury. "Of course they are lying. It is exactly what David said they would do. They paint you as senile, confused, manipulated, and themselves as the concerned victims. But people are going to believe them," I said, feeling panic growing in my chest. "They are going to think I am crazy, that I really have dementia, that you are using me." Margaret took my face in her hands, forcing me to look at her. "Let them think what they want. We have documents, evidence, facts. They only have pretty lies, and lies do not hold up in court." Margaret's phone did not stop ringing for the rest of the day. Friends, neighbors, people who had seen the news and wanted to know if it was true. Margaret answered every call patiently, explaining the real situation, sharing some of the documents by email with those she trusted. Meanwhile, my phone, the one I still had even though I had blocked Jessica's number, started receiving messages from unknown numbers. Cruel, vindictive messages from people who did not know me but had seen the news and decided I was the monster. "Ungrateful old woman," said one. "Your daughter gave you everything, and this is how you repay her," said another. "I hope you rot alone," threatened a third. I read them all with a mixture of horror and disconnection, as if they were happening to someone else. Margaret finally took the phone away from me. Enough. Do not read any more of that garbage. It is people who know nothing talking about what they do not understand. But the damage was done. Jessica had achieved something I had not foreseen. She had turned the public narrative against me before I could even tell my side. David called that night. I saw the press conference, he said bluntly. Clever on their part, I have to admit, but also stupid. How can it be both? I asked. Because now everything is public. Which means when we present our evidence, it will also be public. Every document, every bank statement, every fraudulent transfer, everything. And believe me, when people see the real numbers, when they see the dates, when they see the scale of the theft, public opinion is going to change very fast. And if it does not change? I asked quietly. David sighed. Then it does not change. But we are not fighting for public opinion, Mrs. Vance. We are fighting for legal justice, and that we are going to get. That night, as I lay in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, I thought about everything I had lost in 48 hours. My illusion of having a family, my money, my house, my public reputation, my own daughter. It was almost comical in its magnitude, almost. But I had also gained something. I had gained my voice. I had gained real allies. I had gained the ability to say no, to fight, to stand firm. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than everything else. Margaret's phone rang at midnight. It was Sarah again. I need to talk to Eleanor, she said urgently. It is important. Margaret handed me the phone. Mrs. Vance? I am Sarah Jenkins, a journalist from Channel 5. I know it is late, but I need to speak with you. I saw your daughter's press conference this afternoon, and something did not add up for me. I made some calls, some investigations, and I think there is another story here, a story that deserves to be told. My heart began to beat faster. What kind of story? The truth, she said simply. Would you be willing to talk to me? To tell your version? With documentation? With proof? Give people the full picture. I looked at Margaret. She nodded slowly. Yes, she said. Sarah Jenkins arrived at Margaret's house at 9 a.m. the next day. She was a woman of about 40, with a serious but kind expression, carrying a camera and recording equipment. David was also present. He had insisted on being there to ensure everything was handled correctly. Before we start, said Sarah, sitting in front of me in the living room, I want you to understand that this will be public. Once it airs, there is no going back. Your daughter will know you spoke, and she will probably react. She already reacted, I said with a calm that surprised me. She already painted me as a senile old woman in front of the entire city. It cannot get much worse. Sarah nodded sympathetically. I have seen the documents Margaret sent me last night. The bank statements, the transfers, the fraudulent power of attorney. It is devastating. And it is clearly a case of elder financial abuse. People need to know this. I took a deep breath. What do you need me to do? Just tell me your story. In your own words, from the beginning. And let me ask some questions. Be honest. Be emotional if you need to be. The truth is always more powerful than any elaborate lie. David intervened. And I will be here to stop any question that might compromise the legal case. Sarah agreed. Of course. They set up the camera. They placed a small microphone on the collar of my blouse. The light was bright, making me squint, and then Sarah pressed the record button. Mrs. Eleanor Vance, she began with a professional voice, tell me what happened last Saturday at the Gilded Oak restaurant. And then I started talking. I told her about Jessica's call, about the lunch, about being sent to a separate table, about the exact words my daughter used, incompetent old women who do not know when they are unwanted, about the $3,000 bill, about the humiliation. My voice broke several times. Tears fell. But I kept talking. Sarah did not interrupt me. She let the story flow, and when I finished that part, she asked, was it the first time something like this happened? No, I admitted. It was just the most public, but it has been happening for years. The little humiliations, the derogatory comments, the constant feeling that I was a burden. But I justified it. I thought it was normal, that children drift apart, that it was my fault for not being enough. And the money? Sarah asked softly. When did the financial abuse start? I looked at David. He nodded. I could talk about that. 8 years ago, I said. Jessica came with papers. She said she needed my signature for a loan. I trusted her. I signed, but it was not for a loan. It was a power of attorney that gave her total control over my finances. Sarah leaned forward. And what did she do with that control? She stole from me, I said simply. And hearing the words out loud was like finally releasing them. For 8 years, she systematically withdrew money from my accounts. $200,000 in total. She used it to open a business that failed, to fund a lifestyle she could not afford, and I knew nothing. I thought I was just helping my family when there were emergencies. Sarah took out the documents. She showed them to the camera. These are bank statements from Mrs. Vance's account. As you can see, constant withdrawals. 3 times a week. $500 here, $1,000 there. And here, she pointed to a specific transaction, a transfer of $50,000 at one time. Do you remember this, Mrs. Vance? I looked at the document. The date was 6 years ago. That was the month Jessica opened her boutique. She told me she had secured investors, but the investor was me, my money, without my knowledge. The interview continued for 2 hours. Sarah was meticulous, asking specific questions, asking for clarification, showing documents to the camera. David intervened occasionally to ensure I did not say anything that could compromise the legal case. But in general, they let me speak. Tell my full story, without interruptions, without justifications, just the truth. When it ended, I felt exhausted but also strangely light, as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Thank you, said Sarah, turning off the camera. I know that was difficult, but this is going to help. This is going to change the narrative. When will it air? Margaret asked. Sarah packed up her equipment. Tonight, on the 8 o'clock news. And we will also upload it to the internet. Uncut, unedited, so people see the full context. She left, leaving us in a tense silence. You did well, David said finally. You were clear, honest, and the documents speak for themselves. This is going to help the case enormously. And what happens now? I asked. David reviewed his notes. Now we wait. The preliminary hearing is in 3 days. There, a judge will review the evidence and decide if there is enough to proceed with the full case. Based on what we have, I am 90% sure it will proceed. The hours until 8 at night were endless. Margaret tried to distract me with conversation, with food, with anything. But I was paralyzed, waiting, knowing that once that interview aired, there really would be no turning back. At 7:55, we sat in front of the TV. David had come over too. He wanted to see the public reaction in real time. At 8 o'clock sharp, the news began. Good evening, said the anchor with a grave expression. Yesterday we presented the story of a daughter concerned for her elderly mother. Tonight, we present the other side of that story, and we warn you that what you are about to see is disturbing. The screen switched to the interview. To me, sitting on Margaret's sofa, with red eyes but a firm voice, the full story. Every detail, every document shown clearly. The account numbers pixelated to protect privacy, but the amounts visible. $200,000. The fraudulent house transfer, the constant withdrawals. And my face, saying with a clear voice, my daughter stole from me for 8 years, and when I finally gathered the courage to defend myself, she painted me as crazy. The interview lasted 40 full minutes, something almost unheard of for a local newscast. When it ended, the anchor reappeared. We have attempted to contact Jessica Vance Mendoza and Richard Mendoza for a response. They have not returned our calls, but we will follow this case closely. If you or someone you know is experiencing elder financial abuse, resources are available. He listed helpline numbers, and then moved on to the next story. Margaret's phone exploded immediately. Messages, calls, her social media feed filled with notifications. The interview was already being shared thousands of times. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. How horrible what they did to that poor lady. That daughter should go to jail. I knew something didn't add up with that press conference yesterday. God bless Eleanor Vance. I hope she gets her money back. But there were also negative comments. People who still defended Jessica. Who said I was lying, that the documents were forged, that this was revenge. But they were the minority. The tide of public opinion had turned. David smiled as he checked his phone. Perfect. This is perfect. Now when we go to the hearing, the judge will already be aware of the public scrutiny. Not that it should influence the legal decision, but it helps. That night, as I tried to sleep, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I opened it out of curiosity. Eleanor, this is Catherine, Richard's mother. I need to speak with you urgently. Please. Catherine. The woman who, according to Margaret, Richard had financially destroyed years ago. The woman who had committed suicide. Except apparently she had not committed suicide. She was alive, and she wanted to talk to me. I showed the message to Margaret. Her eyes went wide. I thought she was dead. Richard said she died. We all thought she was dead. What do I do? I asked. Margaret thought about it for a moment. Reply. But carefully. We do not know if it is really her, or a trap by Jessica and Richard. I wrote back. How do I know you are really Catherine? The answer came in seconds. I saw your interview tonight. I saw what my son is doing to you. The same thing he did to me. I thought I should warn you, and offer you my help. I have documents, proof of what he did to me, and I want to make sure he does not get away with it with you like he got away with it with me. My heart raced. Where are you? In a town 2 hours from the city. I hid here 10 years ago, when I finally managed to escape. Richard told everyone I had died so I could not testify against him. But I am alive, and I am ready to talk. I showed the messages to Margaret. She immediately called David. You need to hear this, she said urgently. David arrived 30 minutes later, still in pajamas. He read the messages. If this is real, he said slowly, if Catherine is alive and has documentation of what Richard did to her, this changes the whole case. This establishes a pattern of behavior. This turns Richard from a simple moocher into a serial predator. How do we verify it is real? Margaret asked. David thought for a moment. Ask her to send us a photo of her ID, and to do a video call right now. If it is really Catherine, she will be able to do it. I wrote the message. We waited. 5 minutes that seemed eternal. And then it arrived. A photo of a driver's license. Catherine Vargas Mendoza. The birth date matched what Margaret remembered. And then, Margaret's phone rang. Video call, Margaret answered with trembling hands. The screen showed a woman of about 70, thin, with short gray hair, eyes tired but alert. Margaret, said the woman on the screen. Oh God, it really is you. Margaret covered her mouth with her hand. Catherine, we thought you were dead. I know, said Catherine with a sad smile. That was the plan, Richard's plan. But I am alive, and I have been waiting for the right moment to come out of the shadows. And I think that moment is now. David approached the screen. Mrs. Catherine, I am David Sterling, the attorney representing Eleanor Vance. Would you be willing to testify about your experience with Richard Mendoza? Catherine nodded firmly. Not just willing, eager. I have carried this for 10 years, watching from afar how he ruined other lives. Unable to do anything because legally I was dead to them. But now, with Eleanor denouncing him publicly, I can finally come out. I can speak, and I can make sure he pays for what he did. What exactly do you have? Asked David, already taking notes. Catherine smiled, but it was a humorless smile. I have bank statements showing how he stole $250,000 from me. I have the fraudulent power of attorney he made me sign, identical to the one he made Eleanor sign. I have recordings of conversations where he threatened to cut off my access to my grandkids if I did not give him money. And I have medical documentation showing the stress he caused me, which nearly killed me for real. David looked like he had just won the lottery. Mrs. Catherine, can you come to the city tomorrow? I need to see those documents. I need to prepare you to testify. This is going to completely destroy Richard and Jessica's defense. Catherine nodded. I will leave in the morning. I will stay at a hotel, and I will do whatever is necessary to ensure my son does not destroy anyone else. The call ended. The three of us sat in silence, processing what had just happened. "This is huge," David said finally. "This is absolutely huge. Richard is not going to be able to claim this was a family misunderstanding. Not when there is a documented pattern of doing exactly the same thing to two different women separated by years." "Do you think Jessica knew?" I asked quietly. "About Catherine? About what Richard did to her?" David looked at me seriously. "If she did not know at the beginning, she definitely knows now, and she chose to stay with him anyway. She chose to help him do the same thing to you. That makes her just as guilty as him." The words hurt, but I knew they were true. My daughter was not just a victim influenced by her husband. She was an active participant, an accomplice. And that realization, more than anything else, was what finally killed any hope I still had for reconciliation. Catherine arrived in the city the next day, driving an old but well-maintained car. We met at David's office for security. When she walked through the door, Margaret stood up immediately and hugged her. They were old acquaintances from years ago, before everything fell apart. "I cannot believe you are alive," murmured Margaret against her shoulder. "All these years thinking the worst." Catherine pulled away with tears in her eyes. "I am sorry. I am sorry I let you think that. But I had no choice. Richard threatened me. He said if I ever spoke about what he did to me, he would make sure I never saw my grandkids again. And at that moment, that threat was enough to silence me." She turned toward me and extended her hand. "Eleanor, I saw your interview last night, and I saw myself 10 years ago. The same confusion, the same pain, the same question of how your own family can betray you like that." I took her hand, feeling an immediate connection with this woman who had survived exactly what I was facing now. "How did you get over it?" I asked. "How did you move on?" Catherine sighed deeply. "With a lot of therapy, with a lot of time, and with the determination that he would not take my life completely. I lost my money, I lost my house, I lost my son and my grandkids. But I did not lose my dignity, and I refused to lose my life." David interrupted gently. "Mrs. Catherine, do you have the documents?" She nodded and pulled a thick folder from her bag. "Everything is here. 10 years keeping it, waiting for the right time." David spread the papers on his desk, and it was exactly as Catherine had described. Bank statements showing systematic withdrawals. A power of attorney with language almost identical to the one Jessica had made me sign. Emails from Richard, pressuring her for money. And most devastatingly, audio recordings. "I had a habit of recording our phone conversations," explained Catherine. "At first it was because my memory was failing from stress, and I wanted to remember what we said. But then I realized they were evidence." David played one of the audios. Richard's voice filled the office, cold and calculating. "Mom, I need another 10 grand by the end of the month. And do not give me excuses. You know what I can do. The kids stop visiting you. Is that what you want? To die alone without seeing your grandkids ever again?" Catherine's voice on the recording sounded small, scared. "Richard, I do not have any more. I already gave you everything I had. Then withdraw from your pension. Or sell something. I do not care how, but get it." The audio ended, and the silence that followed was heavy with the brutality of what we had just heard. "How many recordings do you have?" asked David, his eyes shining with the intensity of a hunter who has just found the perfect prey. 17, replied Catherine. 17 conversations over 3 years where he threatens me, manipulates me, or extorts me for money. David leaned back in his chair, a slow smile forming on his face. "Mrs. Catherine, you just gave me the strongest case I have had in years. With this, we are not only going to win against Richard and Jessica, we are going to destroy any defense they try to present." "Good," said Catherine with a fierceness I did not expect from someone who looked so frail. "Because that man ruined my life, and I am not going to allow him to ruin Eleanor's too." We spent the next 2 hours reviewing every document, every recording. David took notes furiously, asking questions, building his strategy. "The preliminary hearing is tomorrow," he said finally. Originally, it was just going to be to establish that there was enough evidence to proceed. But with this, he pointed to Catherine's evidence. "We can ask for an immediate restraining order. We can freeze Richard and Jessica's bank accounts so they cannot hide more money. and we can request that they be ordered to start restitution immediately." "Can they do all that in a preliminary hearing?" asked Margaret, surprised. "With evidence of a pattern of elder financial abuse, documented threats, and proof of systematic fraud, a judge can do almost anything to protect the victim," explained David. "And we have 2 victims. That makes the case even stronger." He turned to Catherine. "Are you ready to testify tomorrow? It will be public. Richard will be there. Jessica will be there. They are going to try to intimidate you." Catherine lifted her chin with determination. "I have been hiding for 10 years. I am not afraid anymore. Let them try to intimidate me. This time, I have the law on my side." That night, I could barely sleep again. Tomorrow would be the day everything would come to light in an official court. The day Jessica and Richard would have to face the evidence of what they had done. I was terrified, but also, for the first time in a long time, hopeful. At 7 in the morning, Margaret woke me up with coffee and toast. "Eat something," she insisted. "It is going to be a long day." I dressed carefully in a simple suit Margaret had bought me. I wanted to look respectable, competent, exactly the opposite of the image of a senile woman Jessica had tried to paint. We arrived at the courthouse at 8:30. David was already there, reviewing his documents one last time. Catherine arrived 5 minutes later, dressed in a dark suit, her expression serene but determined. "Ready?" she asked me. I nodded, though my stomach was in knots. At 9 o'clock sharp, they called us in. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined. Cold, impersonal, with hard wooden benches and a bench where the judge would sit. And there, on the other side, were they, Jessica and Richard with their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who seemed supremely confident. Jessica saw me enter, and her expression hardened. Then she saw Catherine, and the color drained completely from her face. Richard saw her too. He stood up so abruptly that his chair fell backward with a bang that echoed in the silent room. "What the hell?" he began, but his lawyer pulled him back to his seat, murmuring urgently in his ear. "All rise," said the bailiff. The judge entered. He was an older man, about 60, with a stern expression and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Be seated," he ordered. "Case number 23456. Eleanor Vance versus Jessica Vance Mendoza and Richard Mendoza. Fraud, misappropriation, and elder financial abuse." Jessica's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, we want to file a motion to dismiss this case. My client is a devoted daughter who has cared for her elderly mother for years. Mrs. Eleanor Vance is suffering from dementia and is being manipulated by third parties who have their own financial interests." David stood up calmly. "Your Honor, the defense is lying, and I have extensive evidence to prove it. Furthermore, I have a surprise witness whose history will reveal a pattern of behavior by Mr. Richard Mendoza that is directly relevant to this case." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Surprise witness, Catherine Vargas Mendoza." "Your Honor, the mother of the defendant, Richard Mendoza, whom everyone believed dead for the last 10 years, but who was actually in hiding after her son committed exactly the same crimes against her that he is now committing against my client." The silence in the room was absolute. Jessica's lawyer turned to look at Richard with an expression of absolute shock. Richard was pale, his hands trembling visibly on the table. Jessica stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles tense. The judge leaned forward. "Counselor, did you know about this?" The lawyer shook his head rapidly. "No, Your Honor. This is the first time I hear about any of this." The judge looked at David. "Proceed. And this better be as relevant as you suggest." David nodded. "It is, Your Honor. I request permission to call Catherine Vargas Mendoza to the stand." The judge signaled approval. Catherine stood up and walked to the stand with steady steps. The bailiff swore her in, and then her testimony began. "My name is Catherine Vargas Mendoza." She started with a clear voice. "I am Richard Mendoza's mother, and 10 years ago he did exactly the same thing he is doing now to Eleanor Vance. He convinced me to sign a power of attorney under false pretenses. He emptied my bank accounts systematically. He stole more than $250,000 from me. And when I tried to confront him, he threatened to take away access to my grandchildren." Her voice did not shake. She did not cry. She just stated the facts with devastating clarity. David approached. Mrs. Catherine, do you have documentation of these accusations? Yes, she replied. I have bank statements, the fraudulent power of attorney, emails, and 17 audio recordings where Richard threatens me and extorts me for money. The judge straightened in his seat. Recordings? Do you have those recordings with you? Yes, Your Honor. David handed copies to the judge and the defense attorney. I would like to play one of the most representative recordings. The judge nodded. David connected the audio to the room's sound system. Richard's voice filled the space. Cold, cruel, threatening, demanding money, threatening to take away the grandkids. Catherine's voice pleading, saying she had no more. And Richard insisting, without mercy. When it ended, the silence was deafening. I looked at Jessica. She was crying silently, tears running down her cheeks, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who knew she had just been caught. The defense lawyer stood up, visibly disturbed. Your Honor, I request a recess to consult with my clients. Denied, said the judge firmly. You will have the opportunity to cross-examine the witness. The lawyer sat down slowly, looking at Richard with an expression that clearly said, You lied to me about everything. David continued his interrogation. Mrs. Catherine, why did you disappear? Why did you let everyone believe you were dead? Because Richard threatened me, she answered simply. He said if I ever spoke about what he had done to me, he would make sure I regretted it, and I was terrified. I had just lost everything. I was emotionally destroyed, so I disappeared. I changed cities. I let the rumor circulate that I had died, and I lived in hiding for 10 years. And why did you decide to come out now? Catherine looked directly at me. Because I saw Eleanor's interview, and I saw my son doing exactly the same thing again. And I realized that if I did not speak now, he would keep doing this. He would keep destroying vulnerable women, and I could not live with that on my conscience. The judge took the floor. Mr. Mendoza, do you have anything to say in your defense? Richard stood up slowly. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. She is lying. My mother is lying. She has always been dramatic and— The recordings lie too, interrupted the judge dryly. Do the bank statements lie? Do the documents lie? Richard collapsed back into his seat. Jessica finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I did not know. At first I did not know about his mother. When I found out, it was too late. We were already married. We had already started stealing from my client, David completed. Jessica closed her eyes. She did not answer, but her silence was answer enough. The judge reviewed the documents in front of him for what seemed like an eternity. Finally he spoke. I have seen many cases in my 20 years on this bench, but this is one of the clearest examples of elder financial abuse I have witnessed. And the fact that there is a documented pattern makes this even more grave. He turned to Richard and Jessica. I order the immediate freezing of all your bank accounts and assets. I order a restraining order prohibiting you from contacting Mrs. Eleanor Vance under any circumstances, and I order that you begin immediate restitution of the stolen funds. The defense lawyer tried to object. Your Honor, that is what? Interrupted the judge. Too severe for people who systematically stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from vulnerable elderly women? I do not think so. In fact, I am considering referring this case to the district attorney for criminal charges. The words fell like bombs. Criminal charges, jail, real, possible. Jessica was sobbing openly now. Richard was pale as a ghost. The judge continued, his voice cold and definitive. This case will proceed to full trial, but given the exceptional circumstances and overwhelming evidence, I am implementing immediate protective measures. The property fraudulently transferred to the Mendoza's name will be reverted immediately to Mrs. Eleanor Vance's name. The power of attorney is annulled effectively from this moment, and I establish a restitution order of $200,000 plus interest to be paid in a term no longer than 6 months. He banged the gavel. Next hearing in 30 days. Session adjourned. I sat there, unable to fully process what had just happened. I had won, or at least, I had won this battle. David leaned toward me. This is historic. I have never seen a judge take such immediate actions in a preliminary hearing, but the evidence was so solid he had no choice. I looked across the room. Richard was arguing furiously with his lawyer in a low voice, but Jessica was looking at me. Our eyes met for a moment that seemed eternal, and in her eyes I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. Real fear of the consequences she was finally facing. She stood up slowly and walked toward me. The bailiff tensed, ready to intervene, but David raised a hand. "Let her approach," he said quietly. Jessica stopped a few steps away. "Mom," she began, her voice hoarse from crying. "Mom, I am sorry. I did not mean for it to go this far. At first it was just a little money here and there. But Richard said you did not need it as much as we did, that we were building a future. And I just wanted to make my family happy. I was your family," I said quietly. "And you destroyed me." Jessica shook her head desperately. "No, I did not mean to destroy you. I needed. My money? I finished for her. You needed my money, not me. You never needed me." Tears were running freely down her face now. "That is not true. I love you, Mom. I know I haven't shown it well. I know I made terrible mistakes. But I love you." I stared at her, searching for any sign of genuine sincerity. And maybe it was there, buried under years of greed and manipulation. But it didn't matter anymore. "If this is how you love," I said finally, "then I prefer to live without your love." Jessica took a step back as if I had hit her physically. "Do not say that. Please, do not say that. I already said it. And I mean it. I gave everything for you, Jessica, everything. And you treated me like trash. You threw me from your table like I was nothing. And now, when there are finally consequences, you come with apologies and tears. But they are not real. You are just afraid of losing everything, like I lost it." Richard came over and grabbed Jessica's arm. "Let's go," he said brusquely. "We cannot talk to her." The restraining order. But Jessica resisted, looking at me with desperation. "Mom, please. We can fix it. We can return the money. We can." "Mrs. Mendoza?" interrupted the bailiff firmly. "You need to leave now." Richard practically dragged her out of the room. At the door, Jessica turned one last time. "I am sorry," she mouthed, without sound. And then they disappeared. I sat there, feeling a strange emptiness where triumph should be. Catherine came over and sat next to me. "I know how it feels," she said softly. "The hollow victory. Because you win in court but you lose your family. And you wonder if it was worth it." "Was it worth it for you?" I asked. Catherine thought for a moment. "Yes, because I regained my dignity. I regained my ability to look in the mirror without shame. I lost my son, but he had already lost me a long time ago. It just took me years to realize it." Margaret hugged me tightly. "I am so proud of you," she murmured. "So incredibly proud." We walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. There were reporters waiting, shouting questions. David stepped forward. "Mrs. Vance will not be making statements at this time. But we want it known that today, justice prevailed, and that any other victim of elder financial abuse should know there are resources, there is help, and there is hope." They escorted us quickly through the crowd to Margaret's car. Once inside, with the doors closed, I could finally breathe. "Now what?" I asked, feeling the weight of everything falling on me. David, who had come with us, replied, "Now we wait. The judge ordered restitution in 6 months. That means Richard and Jessica have to find a way to pay you $200,000. They will probably have to sell assets, liquidate the business, whatever is necessary. And if they do not comply, they face additional criminal charges." "And will I really get my money back?" I asked skeptically. David hesitated. "Probably not all of it, not immediately. But you will recover something. And, more importantly, you got your house back. That was the big victory today. Your house is returned to your name. You can sell it if you want. Move there. Do whatever you wish with it." My house. The little house I had bought with so much effort 20 years ago, the one I thought I had lost forever. Suddenly, having that back seemed more valuable than any amount of money. "I want to see it," I said impulsively. "I want to go see my house." Margaret smiled. "Then let's go. I have the address." We drove for 40 minutes to the suburbs. The neighborhood was quiet, with big trees and modest but well-kept houses. And there it was. My house. Painted a light cream color I did not remember, with a garden someone had maintained. It looked good, better than I remembered. There are tenants currently, explained David. But with the judge's order, they have 30 days to vacate, unless you want to keep them as tenants and collect the rent yourself. We got out of the car, and I stood on the sidewalk, looking at this house that was mine again. A house that represented years of work, of dreams, of hope for the future. What are you going to do with it? Asked Margaret. I thought about it for a moment. I think I am going to live in it. When the tenants leave, I am going to move here. Start over. Really start over. Margaret nodded with approval. And I will help you. With whatever you need. The following days were a whirlwind. The story exploded in the news. Not just locally but nationally. Daughter steals $200,000 from elderly mother. A pattern of abuse revealed. News programs covered it. Newspapers printed it on the front page. And, surprisingly, I started receiving messages from other women. Dozens. Hundreds. All telling similar stories. Children who had stolen from them. Families who had abused them. Elderly women who had remained silent for years out of shame or fear. You should do something with this, suggested Sarah, the journalist, when she came to visit me a week later. Your story is resonating. It is opening a national conversation about elder abuse. You could be a voice for all these women. The idea intimidated me, but it also intrigued me. What do you suggest? Sarah pulled out a folder. I have been speaking with some advocacy groups. They want you to give talks, to share your story, to help educate other people about the signs of financial abuse. And there is a non-profit organization that wants to hire you as a consultant to help develop protection programs for the elderly. I stared at the folder, overwhelmed. I am no one special. I am just a woman who finally fought back. Exactly, said Sarah with a smile. And that is what makes your story so powerful. You are not an expert. You are not a lawyer. You are just a mother who was betrayed and who found the courage to fight. That is what people connect with. Weeks passed. The follow-up hearing confirmed the judge's orders. Richard and Jessica had to sell their house, liquidate Jessica's business, and sell all their luxury assets. The expensive cars, the jewelry, everything. They managed to gather $120,000 in 2 months. It was not the full $200,000, but the judge established a monthly payment plan for the rest, $3,000 a month for the next 3 years. It is ironic, I commented to Margaret when I received the first payment. $3,000. The same amount they made me pay in that restaurant. Margaret smiled. Poetic justice has its charm. Catherine moved back to the city. She decided there was no point in hiding anymore. She and I became close friends, united by our shared experiences. We started giving talks together at community centers, churches, senior groups, telling our stories, warning others about the signs of abuse, and listening to countless stories from other women who had gone through the same thing. Every story broke my heart, but also strengthened me, because it meant I was not alone, that this was a real, widespread problem that needed attention. 6 months after the initial hearing, I moved back into my house. The tenants had left, and I spent a month renovating it with the restitution money. I painted it colors I liked. I planted flowers in the garden. I bought new furniture that was mine, chosen by me, without anyone else's opinion. And for the first time in years, I felt at home. Truly, at home. Margaret lived only 10 minutes away, and we saw each other almost daily. Catherine came for tea every Thursday afternoon, and slowly I built a new life. A life based on my own decisions, my own priorities, my own peace. As for Jessica and Richard, I saw them once more. It was at the supermarket, 6 months after everything ended. They were in the budget aisle, with a cart full of generic brands. Jessica looked tired, aged. Richard was thinner, wearing clothes that had seen better days. We saw each other. Jessica opened her mouth as if she were going to say something. But then she closed it. She looked down and kept walking. I kept walking too. I did not feel anger. I did not feel vengeful satisfaction. I felt nothing except a quiet calm. Because that part of my life was over, and I had chosen not to carry that weight anymore. A year after the incident at the restaurant, I gave my biggest talk to date. It was at a national conference on elder rights. There were more than 1,000 people in the audience, journalists, legislators, activists. I stood on that stage, looking at all those faces, and told my story, from beginning to end, without shame, without apologies, just the truth. And when I finished, the room exploded in applause. It was not for me. It was for all the women who had been silenced, all those who had been abused, all those who were finally being heard. After the talk, a young woman approached me. "Mrs. Vance," she said shyly, "I am a reporter for a national program, and we wanted to know if you would be interested in telling your story on our show. We reach millions of viewers. It could help so many people." I looked at Margaret, who was by my side. She nodded with a smile. "Yes," I said finally. "Yes, I will do it. Because if my pain can prevent another woman from going through this, then every tear was worth it." Today, 2 years after that terrible lunch, I live quietly in my house. I have my garden that I tend to every morning. I have my friends, Catherine and Margaret, who visit regularly. I have my volunteer work helping other victims of financial abuse. And I have my dignity, recovered, restored, unbreakable. I miss Jessica. I miss the little girl she was. I miss the relationship I thought we had. But I do not miss the pain. I do not miss the humiliation. And I do not miss living my life to please someone who never valued me. She threw me out like I was nothing. She told me to find another table because I was unwanted. And in a way, she was right. I was unwanted at that table, in that toxic family, in that destructive dynamic. But I was not unwanted in the world. I was not unwanted in my own life. And the day I finally understood that was the day I began to be free. That is why I broke every tie, not out of revenge, not out of anger, but because I was forced to protect myself, because no one else was going to do it, and because I finally learned that it is okay to put my needs first, that it is okay to say no, that it is okay to walk away from those who hurt me, even if they share my blood. Sometimes people ask me if I will ever forgive Jessica, and the answer is complicated. Forgiving does not mean forgetting. It does not mean restoring the relationship. It does not mean pretending the damage never happened. I have forgiven in the sense that I no longer carry the anger. I no longer let what happened consume my thoughts. But that does not mean I am going to allow her back into my life. Because forgiveness without boundaries is not forgiveness. It is self-destruction. And I have destroyed myself enough for that family. This is my truth, shared not for pity, not for attention, but because there are thousands, perhaps millions of women my age going through exactly the same thing in silence. Being used, being abused, being discarded by their own children, and they need to know they are not alone, that it is not their fault, that they deserve respect, that they deserve dignity, and that never is it too late to fight back. I was 68 years old when I finally said enough, and if I could do it, anyone can. My name is Eleanor Vance. I was humiliated, robbed, and betrayed by my own daughter, but I survived. I rose up, and now I live every day knowing I am worth more than what they made me believe, that my life has purpose, and that true family is not defined by blood, but by respect, genuine love, and reciprocity. Everything else is just people using your name while slowly destroying you. And that truth, although painful, set me free, completely.